Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to this morning's meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, Thursday, 9th of 2023. My name is Councillor Judith Butt, and I am the Chair of the Licensing Committee and deemed to be the presiding person for the purposes of today's business. So my first task is to ask for a nomination for Chairman, please. May I have nominations from the floor?
Yeah, yourself, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So duly elected, I'd like to ask our clerk, please, Mrs. Holyoake, could you take us through housekeeping? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. To ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Holyoake. So now I will ask for declarations of interest. Councillor Kelsey, any declarations of interest?
None, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnson?
None, Chair, thank you.
Okay, and for completeness, I have no declarations of interest either. Item 4 is protocol for public speaking. You'll have had this circulated, so please note that you do have a revised protocol for the virtual meeting and that has been circulated with the agenda sheet. So we move to the first substantive then, which is item 5, application to vary premises license at Delise Deschamps, which is 13 Jervis Place, Bournemouth, BH1 2AL. An application has been received to vary the premise license for the premises known as Delise Deschamps, which is 13 Jervis Place, Bournemouth, BH1 2AL. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll now ask everybody if you'd like to introduce themselves. So I'll start with myself. My name is Councillor Judith Butt. I'm Chair of the Licensing Committee and Chair of the Subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Johnson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toby Johnson, Ward Member for Alderney and Chair of the Licensing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Kelsey?
Yeah, Councillor Kelsey, East Clifton Springbourne Ward and a member of today's subcommittee.
Thank you very much. A grateful thanks to Councillor Dion and Councillor Williams turning up as our reserves. We always have 2 reserves in place just in case one of the subcommittees incommoded and we have to leave. So thank you very much for attending. If you'd like to say to observe, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, thank you so much and I wish you good morning and I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much. So moving on, Mr. Ihan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, which one? Yeah, I'm Mr. Ihan, yeah.
And you're the applicant. Thank you very much, Mr. Ihan. Sergeant Gosling.
Good morning, Chair. Sergeant Gosling here from the Dorset Police Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team.
Okay, nice to see you. And Mrs. Cole.
Sorry, it's Linda Cole. I'm the legal advisor to the committee this morning.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. King?
Hi, I'm Ellie King and I'm from the licensing team.
You're very welcome. And Mrs. Holyoake?
Morning, Jill Holyoake, clerk to the subcommittee today.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Holyoake. So just to confirm then that everyone who has given notice of their intention to speak has been identified and that anyone who wishes to withdraw that representation or doesn't wish to speak raises their hand now. So we're all content, thank you. So I'll pop through the proposed procedure for order of speaking today, which is fairly simple. The licensing officer, who is Mrs. King, will present her report. Our applicant, Mr. Ihan, will then make his application. There'll be questions of Mr. Ihan by the members and other members present. The responsible authorities, which is the police today, that's Sergeant Gosling, will then make their representations. There'll be questions of the responsible authorities, which is Sergeant Gosling, by all the other parties, and the members will go first. And then at the end of that, everybody will be given an opportunity to sum up with the party who spoke last to go first. And the hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, and our clerk, Mrs. Hollyoak. A notification of subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations, which is today, and the date is February the 9th, 2023. And the notification of the decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. Confirm agreement on the proposed procedure. And we now must confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or make any representation. So I'll ask you if you are content. Mr. Ihan, are you content with the procedure?
Yes.
And Sergeant Gosling?
Yes, Chair, I'm content. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. King?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Cole?
Yes, Chair, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So finally, just to remind everyone speaking, not to repeat the information which you've already given me in writing, but to expand on your written representations, and all questions are to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. Of course, I should say, not to repeat the information which you've already given the subcommittee, not just my good self. So moving on then, we move then to ask our licensing officer, Mrs. King, if you'd kindly present your report. Mrs. King, you have the floor.
Thank you. So the application before you this morning is for the variation of the premises licence at Elise Deschamps, which is a cafe located in Jervis Place in Bournemouth. An application was made by Jamali Ihan on the 20th of December 2022. For the avoidance of doubt, I would like to confirm that Mr. Ihan was both the premises licence holder and the DPS at the time of application. The application seeks to extend the provision of late night refreshment to 5 AM every Thursday, Friday and Saturday. The current licence allows for the provision of late night refreshment from 11 PM to 11:20 PM Monday to Saturday. Please accept my apologies for my mistake in paragraph 3 of the background information on the report, which states that late night refreshment runs Monday to Sunday. Sunday is actually not covered in the current licence. The licensing office received 2 representations against the application. The first from the environmental health team on the grounds that the application would undermine the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective, and the second from Dorset Police on the grounds that the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objective. Environmental Health have successfully mediated with Mr. Ihan, and as a result, conditions as set out in Appendix 5 of my report were agreed and their reputation was withdrawn. I would just draw your attention to the final condition in Appendix 5, which reduces the terminal hour for the provision of late night refreshment from 5 AM to 3 AM on Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. Members are asked to consider whether to grant this application, and should the application be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence and any conditions attached to it, that they are aware that any responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. King. So then, members, participants, any questions on points of fact for Mrs. King? Councillor Kelsey?
Yeah, please, Chair, if I may.
Thank you.
Mr. King, have we had any cause for concerns regarding these premises over the years they've been in place?
Nothing. We've had
Nothing
nothing.
at all. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Kelsey, you content?
I'm content, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson?
No questions from me at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Thank you very much, Mrs. King. Are there any questions for Mrs. King? Mr. Ihan, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. King? No.
No.
No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ihan. And Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. King?
Nothing from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now it's your opportunity, Mr. Ihan, to make your application. And this is to tell us about why you want to have this license and to explain as much as you possibly can about how in asking for this license you can make everything safe for everybody who would wanting to use your premises. Is that clear as to what we'd want to hear from you? Yes? Okay,
Yes,
Mr. Ihan,
yeah.
don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. You've got as long as you like. And,
Yes.
we're not going to bite you. So just speak in your own time. And if we feel there's something we want to tease out of you, we'll just ask a question. Okay, so just take your time. You have the floor, Mr. Ihan. We're listening. Thank you.
Now, say the reason you want to extend your business hours is because business has been very quiet and it's a good area. I've never had any trouble, and you want to extend.
Mr. Ihan, if it's helpful, wife to speak. If you'd like to explain,
Yes,
we're more than happy to hear your wife, because it is very nerve-wracking, and we're hearing that your wife has got all the details. So what's your name, madam?
Donna Ahmed.
Oh, right. So Mrs. Ahmed, if you would, is it Mrs. Ahmed or Miss?
Mrs.
Mrs. Ahmed.
Yeah.
Okay. If you would like to, you have the floor if you'd like to explain to us and put your application forward. Thank you very much.
The reason for asking for extended hours is obviously the business has been very quiet and we just want to do everything we can to get the money in, so basically so we don't lose our business. It'll be me and Jamali and a few other staff working the late night shift. We have cameras which are on the street and inside our premises, that the police through other incidents have found very helpful. They see everything outside. We've helped with other things that have gone on. I'm willing to put up public notices in the window and on the shop counter to keep the noise down and respect our neighbourhood. And please move on, basically. As soon as you've got what you need to get, move on. Don't, in a group outside, I don't want any of that. I just want you to move on, get your food, have a lovely evening, move on. And just respect the neighbours. But for those 3 nights that we're asking for extension, it would help the business. We've never had any trouble or any tell. Obviously, I do know the evening is different, drunk people. But Mr. Ihan has worked in a kebab shop for maybe 15 years in Bournemouth before this. So I think he would spot trouble a mile away.
Okay.
And if anyone was too drunk, they would be asked to move on. We probably wouldn't even serve.
Okay.
We'd ask politely to move on,
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that Mr. Ihan would like to add now?
Would you like to say anything?
Nothing.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ahmed. We've now got the opportunity where the subcommittee, that's Councillor Kelsey, Councillor Johnson and myself, will probably be asking a few questions just to better understand what it is that you're seeking, okay, in your application. So, members, your opportunity for questions. Councillor Kelsey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, at the moment you have 11 o'clock till 11:20 for your late night refreshments. Do you actually get a lot of business in? I know it's a very short time, but what is business like at the moment?
Business at the moment is quiet. Obviously, in the summer, it works till 11 o'clock, but everybody seems to go home. We have our bus drivers, we have a regular clientele, but when the pub shuts or, around 10 o'clock, it would start to pick up because there's no other place around here doing late night refreshments. So we just wanted to give it a go. The summer, we're open all the time, but winter, it's like you're keeping staff for 4 or 5 hours. Somebody's coming, somebody's not coming. So, but in the later evening, people are about more. They want something to eat. We've got the 2-3 bars around here, and we're the only place now that's open. Next door shut, we're only open till 11. So we just wanted to give it a go and see if it works.
Okay, thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kelsey's already asked the question I had in mind, so no questions from me this time.
He's asked the first question. we just need to explain something to you, that this committee can't consider your business finances. So we wouldn't be able to say, oh, it's really important you have this license because it's important to your business so you can make money. That's not something that we can consider. So just to let you know that, okay? Because we have to look at the 4 licensing objectives, and that certainly isn't one that we have to make sure business earns money. That's not one of the requirements, okay? Just so you understand that, okay? Okay, that said, I don't have any further questions at this moment in time. So I'm going to ask if the other attendees do. Sergeant Gosling, any questions for Mrs. Ahmed or Mr. Ihan?
No questions at this time, Chair. No. All I would say is that whilst it's not a question, I will be posing the areas that we've been unable to speak to Mr. Ihan about, and then I would just ask them to consider that in perhaps their final submission, that they'll get an opportunity to a bit later. I appreciate I'm taking on your role there, Chair, in explaining what's happening, but I just want to try and encourage Mr. Ihan to take note of the areas of concern and perhaps have an opportunity to address them in their final summing up.
Yeah, and we too will be asking similar questions of your good self, Gareth Gosling, as to that mitigation. Obviously a very important two-way stream. So thank you very much for that. Mrs. King, do you have any questions for either party?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to our responsible authorities, and that's Sergeant Gosling. Responsible authorities, Mrs. Ahmed and Mr. Ihan, are our statutory consultees, and in this case it's our police who have put in an objection with regard to your application. So we now need to hear from them as to why, and then we'll ask Sergeant Gosling some questions to tease out better, to try and hopefully perhaps be able to come to an agreement today. That is why he's now here. So Sergeant Gosling, without further ado, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, Mr. Ihan, and I think it was Mrs. Ahmed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so my name is Gareth Gosling, so I'm the sergeant responsible for the alcohol licensing team. And just for your purposes, really, as applicants, just to introduce myself. So my responsibility is to make sure that from a policing perspective, we can be satisfied any new or extension of existing provisions are done so in a safe and compliant way that promotes the licensing objectives and tries to address some of the issues that the area might suffer. So I appreciate, in respect of your particular immediate area around your premises, there may not be the level of concern that perhaps you've experienced up till 11 o'clock at night. But naturally, from a policing perspective, we operate 24 hours a day, and challenges do come later on, certainly, because of where you are as a link, really, between the Westover Road and Horseshoe Common area. So my hope is that you would be able to have responsible and compliant and safe late night refreshment provision. Sorry, I'm conscious I broke out then a little bit.
You froze a bit. Could you go back on that to Sergeant Gosling? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So ability to try and work with applicants to try and agree suitable conditions, and for one reason or another we've not been able to do that with yourselves. We have made efforts to try and contact them, for one reason or another we've not been able to discuss them with you. So the areas of concern that are outstanding for us at the moment, one of which you've addressed, which is in respect of CCTV, and really these are the things that need to be within your license as formal conditions. So I'm really pleased the fact that you've considered CCTV as an important factor, and if you do need help with that, then we can support you with that later on. The other areas of concern would be around how you manage those areas of conflict. So you've already touched upon them in your initial submission, around moving people on that perhaps might have had too much to drink or might be combative, so they might be violent or potentially violent. So we would ask you to consider perhaps having Security Industry Authority accredited, so SIA accredited security people on perhaps a risk assessed basis, depending on how busy you are and what your experience is of that type of behaviour. We would also look at incident book to make sure that it protects you. So if you do have to get involved in anything where it's perhaps a report to the police, or maybe doesn't get as far as to the police, that's the sort of thing that we would encourage you to have. Staff training, that's a big thing for me. So making sure that you're prepared. I appreciate, Mr. Ihan, you've got experience of working in the nighttime economy, but it's making sure that your staff have that correct conflict management training. And the other thing is, like you've said, you're slightly isolated there on that route. So there's not very many premises around, and it's difficult for you to understand if there are problems nearby. So we'd ask you to consider a radio link as well to other premises, which can be achieved through the Town Watch scheme. And then finally, one thing that is really becoming more and more of a concern at this time, and especially as it gets later and later in the night, is issues of a welfare nature. So some sort of welfare policy that you would have so that your staff, perhaps as part of your training, can understand that you might need to deliver that immediate welfare to customers. It may even be like a first aid issue if people are coming to you. So they're the key issues that I'd ask you to consider. And the reason why we find ourselves here today is because I was slightly concerned that you hadn't understood importance of putting the full licensing objectives. Now, having learnt that you've got some experience in the nighttime economy in a kebab shop, Mr. Ihan, that goes some way towards reassuring me. But I would just ask you to address some of those areas and perhaps take a moment to consider them. And these are the areas that we would expect to be addressed by any late night refreshment provision. I'm encouraged by the hours coming back to 3 o'clock. I think that will help no end with promoting the public safety and prevention of crime and disorder, because we do get that much more issues. The later you go on, we do get that much more issues. So I do think that 3 o'clock is a much more reasonable time, and that would certainly be supported by me. But on that note, Chair, I won't take up any more time, and I'll hand back to you for any questions, please.
Thank you very much. Firstly, very pleased because I think some of our questions, as you know, Sergeant Gosling, would have sat round those suggested conditions, which is what we're here to try and have a meeting of minds to take things forward to have a positive outcome. So that's extremely helpful. You tell us that that efforts have been made to contact and speak to the applicants. It's always a challenge, I know, for both parties. And it may be that the applicants didn't understand as to why they were being contacted and obviously had other concerns. So I think down is understandable. But thank you for taking that forward. So we now have some suggested conditions on the table. With regard to that and Sergeant Gosling's assurance, feeling better assured with regard to the hour and the past experience of the applicant. Members, questions for Sergeant Gosling? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small one, I think, really for Gareth. From reading the normally, obviously, we see it phrased as this will undermine the licensing objectives, but here, am I right in thinking that your concerns are of a less substantial nature, and that you just want the assurance that they will actively promote the licensing objectives?
Exactly that. I don't think I could put it better myself. I think we're not in a position here, as we do find ourselves with some other applicants where we don't think that the provision would be appropriate. So, kind of flat no, if you like. But I think this is more of a rather a yes, but. So, keen to support any businesses in the town centre. And I know matters of a fiscal nature are not for this committee, but we do try and work in partnership with all businesses. But we do have to be and I appreciate it's not necessarily always in line with the Licensing Act, but we try and support proactively as much as we can to prepare businesses to succeed from the outset rather than encountering issues later on that we can perhaps foresee. I think it would be remiss of us not to be a bit proactive on that.
Today's course, you need to do a first aid course.
Yes, that's a
Thank you,
very,
Gareth.
a very good way of putting it. To succeed from the outset.
You know what ambulances are like. You need.
Okay. Mrs. Ahmed, if you'd kindly put your microphone just off, just so we can't hear your conversation, that'd be fine. Just carry on talking, but just so we can hear the conversation. Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. Any further questions, Councillor Johnson? No? Okay. Councillor Kelsey, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Morning, Sergeant Gosling. If these conditions were in the original application, would you have made your objection?
No, had we, I think, coupled with the reduction in the hours to 0300, which I think is a lot more appropriate. I think if that had been coupled in with these conditions here, I think that would also have given me the reassurance that they understand that the applicant understands the challenges ahead. I think one of the issues from the outset was that, unfortunately, on the application, and I don't think it reflects correctly Mr. Ihan's experience. It's more of an administrative experience, but on the original application, it said something along the lines of, "I don't understand this."
Yeah.
And I think that for me kind of does ring alarm bells, because it, I expect, whilst we can't expect everyone to be really experienced and seasoned operators. I think we need to have a starting point there where there's at least an understanding of the licensing objectives, and I think given the fact that Mr. Ihan has approached this positively and has that experience, that I can only take on face value, of course, but I think had we had, going back to your original question, I think had we had some detail around those conditions, then I'm certain that we could have agreed it in advance of the hearing.
Thank you. That's most helpful. Thank you.
That's very useful. Thank you very much. I think that everything that I wanted to check on has been covered. We're hearing from you that you're feeling more assured. It's something that the committee can consider with regard to having challenged that and having found that having challenged issues that sit around your concerns that you didn't feel that the applicants understood their requirements, but you now feel by understanding that the applicant has had some experience, or some quite large experience, 15 years, and the way in which the applicants have clearly understood it and offered those mitigations because they need to be there. So we'll certainly consider all that in our deliberations. So before I move on, any questions, Mr. Ihan or Mrs. Ahmed, for Sergeant Gosling? And if you'd like to put your mic on, Mrs. Ahmed, if you have a question. We can't hear you. Your mic's not on.
Hello. I am interested now in Mr. Ihan taking a first aid course, because I think that is really important, because unfortunately at the moment, I know myself firsthand, ambulances sometimes are not able to get there very quick. So I think a first aid course would be absolutely fantastic, because maybe you could save someone or prevent them bleeding more, or whatever happens, or choking on the toilet.
Mrs. Ahmed, I'll just stop you there. That's wonderful, but you'll have that opportunity when you sum up, as to when you're summing up and telling us about what you feel you want to do. You can tell us then. But I've just asked, did you have a specific question for Sergeant Gosling? If not,
No.
that's okay. That's lovely.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ihan, did you have a question for Sergeant Gosling? You don't have to have one. It's not required. But if you do have one, that's
no. Thank you.
okay. So you'll be able to tell us all about what you were going to say when you sum up at the end. Okay, that's not a problem, right? Thank you very much for that. So, Mrs. King, do you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling?
Nothing, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the opportunity now where you get to sum up and tell us everything. You've listened to all the arguments, you've listened to what Sergeant Gosling's had to say, you've listened to our questions, and you'll be able to put forward as much as you can so that we can go away and hopefully make a decision which suits all parties, which is what we want to do. Okay, so having said that, first opportunity to sum up is to you, Sergeant Gosling. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I won't reiterate what I've just said, but all I would say is that if you do require any support with drawing up any of the details for the conditions, then we're more than happy to assist. But I would just be more than happy to invite the applicant to sort of confirm where they are really on those 6 areas of concern. But nothing more to add. Thank you.
Okay, yes, that would be useful to know where you're landing this and where the ballpark is. Thank you very much for that kind offer. So now, Mrs. Ahmed, you have an opportunity to sum up and tell us your thoughts about what you've heard and how you'd like to take this forward. Thank you.
First of all, the first aid course, I'd like Mr. Ihan to complete one and maybe look into the radio links that the officer was talking about for safety reasons, obviously. We do have good cameras. Like I said, it's helped with the police before. Many times of a late night, they've come in and done all the cameras and got what they needed for other cases. So I know my cameras and everything are okay. But no, my main concern is, like you said, if somebody needs help, we need some sort of first aid certificate behind us or training. That's my big issue.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And Mrs. King, do you have anything to say in summary?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair.
Okay. So just before I close the debate, then, is there anything that anybody would like to raise, and does everybody feel they've had an opportunity to ask the questions they wish and get the answers to them? Are we all content? Councillor Kelsey, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. May I just ask something of Mr. and Mrs. Ihan, please, Chair?
Of course you may.
Mr. and Mrs. Ihan, Sergeant Gosling mentioned a couple of things in his comments. He mentioned keeping an incident book. Are you quite content to have that added as a condition on your licence were we minded to grant this?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. And on the radio link, you've said you would like to do that. So again, that's fine. The first aider you've agreed to. He also mentioned about staff training. Now, obviously you're only going to be a couple of you working there, so it's not going to be a massive conflict to you. But you need to make sure that you're aware of any updated licensing rules, etc. So you need to make sure that you are trained and you do keep on top of it. There are websites you can go to get that. And I'm sure if anything new comes along that both Ellie King from our licensing and Sergeant Gosling would be happy to help you with that. They're really important for us as a subcommittee to make sure that you know what you're doing and that we have every faith in knowing what you're doing. I think Sergeant Gosling has indicated some very good things there with conflict management. You know, you can get some of that, and the SIA training, the SIA dormant. I know they're incredibly expensive, but they do save a lot of hassle, and they do put you in a position where you're going to be safe as well as your customers. Yes. So that is definitely something that you need to look at. You don't have to have them like from the time you're open. It's just the late night evening times. It'll be worth having them and work out when and where. Would you be happy if they were imposed as conditions?
I haven't, to be honest, the security I hadn't thought about at this time, but I would be happy if I felt that we needed them. I would 100% say to him,
yes, they can be done on a risk assessment basis. That's what
absolutely.
I would, if I felt it was getting out of hand and the people were getting more drunk, I would say to him, we either stop this or you get security in. I'm very firm. I'm willing to give things a go, and I know when it gets out of hand. Obviously.
We understand that. Thank you.
I'm born here and I understand what it's like out there now.
Thank you, Mrs. Ihan. I just wanted to be aware that you were aware of your surroundings, as it were, and that you would be happy to mitigate as and when it was necessary to do so.
As and when it's necessary, a halt would be put on it, and I'd say, you ring around. Yeah. That's it.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, and sorry to bring the late question to you.
No, that's fine.
That's very, very useful. Thank you, Councillor Kelsey, for that. We have an opportunity to summarise. Same for the members And the one other area is obviously the you've already stated, but the moving people on in a timely way, so that people aren't hanging
Yeah,
around.
no, where he's had the kebab, he's very calm and can talk people down, you know, and my personality is quite bubbly, and you know,
Yeah,
I can
I think
adjust to a situation.
Okay, Mrs. Ahmed, I think it sits more around people gathering outside.
Yes, no, I don't want that.
People on so that they don't attract other people, and then that's what can lead to some conflicts.
Yes, fighting in groups. Yeah.
People who've had a little bit of a drink. Okay, that's lovely. So if there's no further questions, everybody's so content. I will conclude the hearing. So at the end of the meeting, we have another subcommittee after this. We will adjourn in private with our legal advisor and our clerk to deliberate. And notification subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. So that first day is February the 9th, which is today. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'll ask our legal advisor, please, Mrs. Cole, if she would kindly explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so there will be a right of appeal to the decision that is made today. That appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court, details of which will be all in the letter confirming the decision. And the appeal needs to be made within 21 days of receipt of that letter.
Okay, so thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you for sharing your information with us and for advising us as to your application. Thank you, Sergeant Gosling, and thank you, Mrs. King, and to all concerned. So I will now close the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, and you're very welcome back to today's meeting of the Subcommittee of Licensing, which is Thursday, the 9th of February. We move on to the substantive, which is the application for premises licence Christchurch Road Stores, 62 Old Christchurch Road, Bournemouth. And before we start, I would just like to declare an interest in that Mr. Goldblatt was a past councillor of Bournemouth, and therefore, as a past councillor, I have known him as a colleague in the past. So if we could just note that interest, please. I don't know if any other members have any other interests to note.
Yeah, same goes for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. So with that said, we'll move on. An application for a new premise licence has been received for the premises known as Christchurch Road Stores, 62 Old Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, BH1 1LL. This matter was adjourned by the subcommittee on the 18th of January 2023 with the agreement of all parties to enable the applicant to attend the hearing. This matter is now brought for the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Councillor Judith Butt. I'm the chair of the Licensing Committee and the chair of the subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Kelsey, I'm from Eastcliff and Springbourne Ward and a member of a subcommittee.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toby Johnson, Ward Member for Alderney and Bourne Valley and Vice Chair of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gregory, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Nick Gregory, potentially owner of Christchurch Road Stores, Old Christchurch Road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gregory. And Mr. Goldblatt.
Yes, good morning, Chair, and good morning to members. I hope you can hear me all right. My computer has been playing up somewhat. Yes, I'm a business advisor to Mr. Gregory. I'd just like to point out I receive no fees for this particular work. I am now retired, and my idea in this is that I help entrepreneurial businessmen bring to my town what I think it needs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goldblatt. And you'll be speaking on behalf of Mr. Gregory?
Yes, no doubt.
We'll also refer to Mr. Gregory as well if you'd like to speak. It's not a problem, but we'll ask you to lead on that. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Goldblatt. Sergeant Gosling?
Yes, good morning, Chair. Gareth Gosling here, Sergeant from Dorset Police's Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team.
Thank you. And Mrs. Rogers?
Good morning, Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Good morning, it's Linda Cole. I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
And Mrs. Hollyoak?
Good morning, Jill Hollyoak, clerk to the subcommittee today.
Thank you all very much. So I just want to check that everybody who's given their intention to speak has been identified. And if anybody wishes to withdraw a representation, or you wish to speak or you don't wish to speak, please raise your hand. If I could ask that everybody does switch their mics off, please, so we have no background noise. But I'll repeat that. If nobody who's indicated they would like to speak does no longer wish to speak, please raise your hand. No, I see no hands raised, so we are all present and correct and wishing to speak. That's absolutely fine. So with regard to the procedure, I'll take you through that. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicant will make the application. There'll be questions of the applicant by all parties, and members of the committee will go first. Our responsible authorities will then make their representations. There'll be questions of the responsible authorities, and members of the subcommittee will go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up. The parties vote last to go first, and the hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. A notification of subcommittee's decision will be given in the period of 5 working days, beginning of the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today, February the 9th, Thursday. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I'll just now confirm that everybody is so content with that procedure. So, Mr. Gregory, are you content?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Goldblatt, are you content?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sergeant Gosling?
Yes, content, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you all very much. So just finally, just to remind everyone to not repeat the information that you've already given, but to expand on your written representations. And please, all questions to be asked through the chair and no cross-examination of parties. So with that said, I'll ask our licensing officer, please, Mrs. Rogers, if she would present her report. Mrs. Rogers, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. This application is to permit off sales of alcohol between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. each day of the week. Dorset Police have made a representation on the grounds that to grant the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety licensing objectives. Since submission of the application, the applicant has now offered to provide off sales by delivery only, but also provide only multi-packs of alcohol on the shelves. The applicants also offered that no spirits are proposed to be sold at all. It would be useful to have some explanation and clarity of this when they present their application. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities or any other person. And should this application be granted and they fail to operate in accordance with it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. Thank you. So, members, do we have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers? Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelsey.
No, Chair, we just need that part clarified about off sales and no spirits. I think that's key to this whole thing at the moment.
Indeed, you're absolutely right, and we'll be asking the applicant if they can clarify that. Thank you very much for that reminder. Thank you. So we have no questions on points of fact from our members. Mr. Goldblatt or Mr. Gregory, do you have any questions on points of fact from the licensing officer's submission?
Not from me, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, and Mr. Gregory?
Nothing from me, Madam Chair, no.
Thank you very much. And Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions? Sorry? No, so sorry, I just heard a voice. If you could pop your mics off afterwards, that's really helpful, because the odd shout and noise, it's quite distracting when you're chairing remotely. That's kind of you. Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers?
No, I think just the clarity, again, as highlighted by Councillor Kelsey, that's imperative for me.
Indeed, we will draw that out. Okay. So that being said, Mr. Goldblatt, you're going to be speaking on behalf of Mr. Gregory. We can ask Mr. Gregory, of course, some questions at the end of your submission. Could you be clear, please, in explaining and advising us as to the points that have been raised with regard to the conditions that you've offered, which are off sales delivery only, multi-pack on shelves and no spirits? We'd like further explanation on that, please, within your summary, if you could. Thank you, Mr. Goldblatt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, hoping my croaky voice isn't causing you too much trouble. Several things have changed in the area of this shop over the last few months. Two very large retailers, notably Tesco on the square in Bournemouth and Lidl in Richmond Gardens Shopping Mall, which is just across the road from the shop in question, have closed and are not being replaced, to my knowledge, by people selling alcohol. Both of those retailers, supermarkets, had huge stocks of alcohol, wine, gin, and everything you wanted. They're now gone. So local people in the area that perhaps work or live in the area that just want to pop into a local, what we used to call a corner shop, and get some milk and some bread and a few cans of lager, have got a problem. And of course, we have a huge tourist industry in our town, thank goodness. And people are always coming up to me and saying, do I know where this is? Do I know where that is? And if they say to me, I want to do a bit of shopping, I wouldn't quite know what to say to them were I standing in the vicinity of that particular shop that we're trying to open. So basically, I think this will be very good for this part of town. I've read the report from the police. May I talk about the report from the police? Is that okay?
You can say whatever you so wish.
Thank you very much. Well, I only got sight of that report at 7 o'clock last night after a Zoom meeting with one of the charities that I'm involved with. So I haven't had a lot of time to go through it, but it's fairly standard procedure. I know that the police tried to stop any applications that involve the sale of alcohol. Obviously, they weren't able to stop Tesco, and they weren't able to stop Lidl, because both of those shops have been operating for quite a few years now.
Mr. Gobler, I think I just need to correct you. That may be the feeling or the consideration that you have, but the police don't try and stop alcohol licenses. They do their best to mitigate and to work with applicants to find a meeting of minds and a way forward. So that statement isn't quite accurate, but I know where you're coming from. But if we could just keep to accuracies, that would be useful, because this is a public record. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gobler.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for that correction. I've been out of local politics a long time, so
indeed.
I'm getting old as well. When I did read through the police statement, if I'd have come down from out of space and read it, I'd have thought that the store that was trying to be opened was going to have some sort of giant illicit still inside it. It seemed to be a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. This is just a local store for local people to pop in and buy a bottle of milk and a loaf of bread and a couple of cans of beer and go about their business. We're not in competition with some giant supermarket. We're just trying to give a service to local people, which is where I come from on this whole matter. I also can say that I know Mr. Gregory and have known him for some time. I know him to be a very honourable person, and I know that he will see that his staff are properly trained and that they are aware of the dangers of selling alcohol to underage people. We all should be aware of that. It's a terrible thing to do. I can't comment on the off sales that you were talking about, but I'm sure Mr. Gregory will be able to explain what exactly they're suggesting. May I leave it at there?
Thank you very much, Mr. Goldblatt. That's very helpful. So if we could ask Mr. Gregory specifically what the committee is looking for, and also Sergeant Gosling, if you could advise us about your condition that you've offered regarding off-sales delivery only, multi-packs on shelves, and that there will be no spirits. Could you just explain that so that we have a good understanding of what you're offering us? Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. Police in any way, shape or form, but there does, as Mr. Goldbart says, seem to be some requirement for people to buy alcohol. We anticipate, as delivery increases and companies like Deliveroo and Just collect KFCs and McDonald's, but also ask Deliveroo to come and collect shopping from the co-op or to keep alcohol out of sight and downstairs, and for a delivery driver to come and have his delivery fulfilled with who's ordered it. That was one offering which we felt wouldn't contribute to drinking in the area. And also we felt if there were multi-packs of 6 or 10 of alcohol of low strength, not anything over but not can and take it out and drink it, and nothing strong, nothing spirits, which would contribute to possibly drinking in the city centre, which obviously, having been involved with the business for over 12 months in another situation, we have seen the kind of situation that arises, and we wouldn't want to contribute to that. Therefore, spirits would not be part of our offering. But as a shop starting up, 1% of the total turnover, so it would be a struggle to make the margins if we didn't have at least some potential to sell alcohol by delivery to Deliveroo, where the driver has got a delivery address to take it to, not just to take it, drink it, and hence the spirits, which again are the strongest things that you can, and we wouldn't need to sell spirits at all. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you. I will ask just for a little bit of further clarity on that. So this seems to be an either or, but just to advise you, as I advise most of our applicants, We are here to uphold the 4 licensing objectives, and ensuring that any business makes a profit, as Mr. Goldblatt will know, is not something which we can consider. So as much as we'd love to be able to put that on our list so that all our applicants are able to do that, we physically can't. So
Of course.
that's not a consideration, just to let you know. So you are offering the off-sales delivery, which would be by the vehicle, the mechanism of Deliveroo or similar. So
Correct.
the off sales would only be home delivery. So there'd be no off sale from the premise. So nobody could pop in and buy a beer and leave. Or, this is what I'm hearing, you are suggesting multi-packs of, you said some quite large amount, 6 to 10, I believe. Was it 6
Yes.
to 10? Of a low strength, you offered 4%, which would be available to buy from the premise. So people could
Correct.
walk and buy it. But no spirits whatsoever.
No.
Right.
Not
Okay.
at all.
So the offer is an either or no spirits. Okay, that's fine. Now we understand that. Is there anything further you'd like to add before I ask our members if they've got any questions?
No, thank you. That's
Are
fine.
you both content? Mr. Goldblatt, are you content?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. So members, we've had an explanation as to those conditions which are offered on the table. We also had that by way of a tacit condition with proper training with regard to underage drinking and obviously selling alcohol to people underage, and having training as to knowing what to watch out for there. I think that was what was being said. So that's what we've got on the table at the minute. But members, any questions? Councillor Kelsey.
I don't know where to start, to be quite honest, Chair.
But I'll let you start. If you want to, Councillor Kelsey, there are a lot of questions. So if you wanted to pose a couple, I'll then go to Councillor.
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah.
Firstly, my first sight of this application is, why is it in front of us now? Because it appears to me that they don't know what they want. They don't know whether they want to do deliveries, sales from the shops, a bit of both, or a bit of nothing. Looking at the plan of this shop, for someone that doesn't want to sell alcohol out from the shop, there's a huge space down along that back wall that is just specifically designated to alcohol. I'm looking at it now. We have chilled multi-pack beers and ciders, chilled beers and ciders, chilled bills and ciders, red wines, ambient beers. Now, for someone that doesn't want to sell beer to people in the street, that's a hell of a lot of storage space being taken up by alcohol. So I'm not sure that this applicant at the moment is actually ready to be in front of us. He doesn't seem to know what he wants. There is nothing about off sales to people about buying for proxy sales, etc. I just don't understand what we're supposed to be trying to decide on, to be quite honest, Chair.
Indeed, and the application gives very little mitigation, regrettably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is where we would have sight of being able to understand that mitigation, so the 4 licensing objectives are upheld. This is quite a challenge. I'll demur to Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Following that, I don't think I have any questions at this particular moment, but I'll put my hand up should I think of something.
Yes, I think the issue, thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think the issue that we do have here, gentlemen, is that you have an application in train and you've off the cuff, so to speak, because you were unable, regrettably, for whatever reason, not to be able to have sight of the police report until last night. And that police report would have very much iterated how you would have moved forward. Now, I'm not putting that at the feet of Sergeant Gosling at all. But if you've not had sight of the report, this is something which would have happened a long, long while ago. And based on that report, with regard to mediation between the parties, which was you and the responsible authority, we would have hoped that you would have come to some reasonable adjustments, if not a full agreement, because otherwise it wouldn't be coming to us, but some reasonable adjustments that we could then consider, and that Sergeant Gosling could also consider, and if given assurances, then his view may change. But we don't have anything on the table, so it's really quite awkward. But I'll carry on with our process, and if at any stage it was felt that the legal advisor wanted to advise us, I'm absolutely certain she'll come in. But we'll carry on with the process and we'll try and tease out further detail. So are there any further questions for the applicants? Councillor Johnson? No, and Councillor Kelsey, you have your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just a point of clarification, really, as well. At the beginning of the statement, Mr. Goldbart stated that both Tesco's and Lidl's had closed and were not reopening. That is actually not a truth, because Tesco's is merely closed for a refurbishment and will be opening again next month. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration as well, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe, Councillor Kelsey, you're very helpful. I believe they're both doing the same, but
Lidl's is not reopening, Chair, but Tesco's definitely is.
Yeah, I have heard on the cuff that there will be something similar, Councillor Kelsey, but not Lidl's in itself. But then we don't know that. But what we do have is that surety that Tesco's are opening. So that's some more local intelligence and information which wasn't available to Mr. Goldblatt. So that's absolutely fine. We understand that. So that said, if there are no further questions from members, Mr. Gregory, you'll have an opportunity to answer some questions in your summary, if you so wish. If it was an answer to a question, Mr. Gregory, then I would hate to stop you doing that. So please do go ahead. You have the floor, Mr. Gregory, if you wanted to speak.
A slight clarification is that I was contacted by the police, referenced their view on the situation. I discussed with the lady in question at the time, what did she think? Were there any things that we could suggest that might, and I was told basically nothing I said would make any difference, and the answer would be a no from them, come what may. And reference the plan, I do apologise, the plan was drawn up when I was, frankly, and as far as the plan, I'm sorry, it was not redrawn since the original plan was drawn up. So I apologise. I apologise.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for that further information. It's extremely helpful. With regard to questions of the applicant, Mr. Goldblatt, yes?
Yes, may I just make one comment? I wasn't aware that Tesco was being refurbished. I know there's a new restaurant being opened next door, so it all looks very confusing at the moment. There's structures all around the whole area. But the people that own Richmond Garden Shopping Mall are old clients of mine, and I did speak to the owner of that, and I've been told that Lidl are going to be turn into a pound store, which is not the sort of place where they sell strong, well, any alcohol to my knowledge, but that's apparently what it's going to be. So we are going to at least lose one of those places in which you can buy alcohol. Thank you.
Okay, that's extremely helpful to advise us of that. Thank you. Right, just my system's just decided to go to sleep. Right, wake it up again. Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Goldblatt. Things do come to light which we're not aware of, so we're always quite grateful for you to share them in this committee. That isn't a problem. So if our applicants are so content with regard to their submissions and our members are so content at this moment with questions, Councillor Kelsey, Councillor Johnson, yes? Okay, thank you. I will ask now, it's your opportunity, Sergeant Gosling, for any questions for the applicants. Thank you, Sergeant Gosling, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will start, and I appreciate, and I do appreciate that yourself as Chair have stepped forward to make a comment in respect of a submission by Mr. Goldbart in respect of the police's approach to alcohol licences. But as this is a public record, I will state our position when it comes to alcohol licences, and that is to support the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003. It's our responsibility as an authority, certainly in respect of preventing crime and disorder, to consider every application on its merits. And I think over the past 5 years of acting in this capacity, I think I've done so well, and I think I've done so with integrity. We try and be fair, and I absolutely refute the comment made that we will always argue against any alcohol provision in the town centre. So that said, I'm grateful also for Mr. Kelsey correcting the applicant in relation to 2 nearby premises, the first being Tesco's, which opens in early March following a period of investment, and we're working with them to make sure that any provision that they have there will be improved. So any sort of effect that they have in that area, we will be working with partners to make sure that any improvements that they can make as part of that investment are done. And it is unfortunate that Lidl has closed further up the Old Christchurch Road, but there are further off sales provisions available further up Old Christchurch Road towards Horseshoe Common. In respect of the supplementary evidence that I submitted, whilst I have resubmitted that supplementary evidence over the past 24 hours, I did so in response to a very late submission in respect of the two conditions that were or two proposals that were put forward by the applicant. But that was in addition to the fact that I had sent the same document to the applicant on the 10th of January. That's a month ago. Okay. The challenge is,
Sergeant Gosling, can I just be clear? Is that the document that we have in front of us?
yes,
Which is the supplement, which is your submission, supplementary submission, yes? And that was the document, yeah.
that's correct. And we work hard to provide these documents, and we have 4 of these hearings over the next, well, essentially a week. So we work hard to try and produce as much of these documents in advance as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. In respect of this particular area of Bournemouth, and I appreciate that Mr. Goldbart is an experienced councillor, but from a police perspective, and we are the authority charged with tackling antisocial behaviour and street drinking, antisocial behaviour and street drinking in the town centre is one of the biggest concerns. I pride myself on the relationship that I have with licensees, and this is something that we are looking to try and tackle as much as possible. Our neighbourhood policing teams have specific operations working with partners at BCP Council to try and tackle street drinking. We have problems in the gardens that are fairly nearby, and any off sales alcohol provision is extremely sensitive in this area. We would not have told Mr. Gregory, to my knowledge, that there is no chance of mediation. We have a track record of mediating applications, and it's always our intention to put together proposals conditions that meet the concerns of that particular area and to help the applicant to promote the licensing objectives. I remain concerned by the conditions that are being proposed. I'm still not 100% clear on what is being offered, because the plans of the site, as has already been highlighted by Mr. Kelsey, don't reflect what's being offered. And I feel that this last minute change, especially with regards to conditions around 4% alcohol, that really highlights to me potentially a lack of experience on the part of Mr. Gregory, because there are very, very few brands of alcohol that are less than 4%.
Sergeant Gosling, I wondered whether I could, this information is obviously very, very tacit, but I just wondered whether you would be able to gather that up in your submission, which you're next on the floor, so to speak. This is may not have been clear, and I apologise, but this is an opportunity if you've got any specific questions for the applicant.
Sorry, I thought I was providing my submission. I do apologise.
Oh well, I thought we were on questions. How do we move to submission? Have I missed something? No, I don't believe we. I believe we were still.
No, sorry, Chair. I think you did ask Sergeant Gosling to put his case across.
Yeah, right. Okay. I thought we were still on questions. I haven't marked off my paper. I don't recall that. But I just want to be absolutely certain that I did ask Mrs. Rogers. I don't recall asking Mrs. Rogers if she had any questions for the applicant. Mrs. Rogers?
That's okay. I don't. Only the clarification, which
because generally I would ask members if they have questions. I would then ask apologise for that oversight. Thank you.
I do apologise for that, Chair. Sorry.
No, we don't apologise to each other as long as we're getting the facts. I just didn't want to omit the fact had I asked you whether you had any questions, because I don't recall doing that. Okay. Yep. So if you don't have any questions, then yes, you're happy to be in your submission stage. Thank you.
Thank you. You're happy that I don't have to repeat anything else?
No, not at all.
I've repeated already. Okay.
No.
And I think one final point, and something that is so rare I can't remember any other sort of occasion when it's happened, but I do pride myself on working well with applicants, and I think the suggestion following information that I received from BCP Council that the applicant had simply asked for the application to be granted despite the objection from police, it does one of two things for me. Either suggests that there's a lack of understanding as to the process, or it suggests that our views are not important, and as sort of primary sources of information with regards to crime and disorder, I expect, and I do experience in the vast majority of cases that applicants do take what we have to say in respect of crime and disorder to be very serious, and they do take those concerns on board. And I think it's unfortunate that our concerns weren't taken on board, and that the request was made for the application to be granted without the need for a subcommittee hearing, despite the objection from police. I've got nothing further to add. Thank you. My concerns remain.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. So now we have questions of Sergeant Gosling by the members. Councillor Kelsey.
No, I have none at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no. And Councillor Johnson.
Same for me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I at this moment have no questions. It's difficult to frame any with regard to the information we have in front of us. To be quite candid, there's a definite difficulty here for members. Mr. Goldblatt, do you have any questions of Sergeant Gosling?
No, not really. Other than to say, I doubt you'll find anybody in this town with more regard for the police than myself.
Mr. Goldblatt, what I do is, as I absolutely understand that, and we respect that wholly, that isn't under question. But you'll have an opportunity in just a moment to put forward a summary, and you can make those comments there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
This was just for questions for Sergeant Gosling. Just for
no, I have no questions.
No, okay. Mr. Gregory, do you have any questions?
No questions, Chair. No.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mrs. Rogers, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, make sure that I do my process correctly this time. So now it's an opportunity for all parties to sum up. And this is where Mr. Goldblatt and Mr. Gregory, you'll have an opportunity to put forward everything that you would like to say with regard to what you've heard with us, our submissions on our questions, and what Mr. Sergeant Gosling's had to say. So that said, I will ask, please, the first individual with regard to summing up is those who spoke last. So Sergeant Gosling, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't take up any more time as absolutely necessary, but the concerns we have regarding off sales affecting street drinking and antisocial behaviour in this particular area are very sensitive. I don't feel that we've had suitable mitigation in respect of those concerns, and my thoughts are that the conditions being offered as recently as the last couple of days have not been thought through correctly. I don't think they do address the concerns that we have in the town centre, and those concerns remain exactly the same as per my original submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. Mr. Goldblatt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my original point about this still stands. This is a very small shop in a little precinct near the heart of Bournemouth. To talk about people drinking in the gardens and the parks, Well, the square is run by the gardens and the parks as well, and there are shops selling alcohol. As you say, Tesco's going to reopen. No one seems to have said that that would be wrong. There's a shop that would help the local community, the elderly people in that area. I see them walking up and down all the time. All they want to do is do a little bit of shopping. And if they want some beer to take home or a bottle of wine, that's what I think they should be allowed to do. We have, Mr. Gregory has put forward various offers that perhaps I would not have put forward, frankly. I think the original application made sense to me as a local resident. We're putting restrictions in the way of this to try to get approval basically from the police. And I don't see that this shop is going to do anything to harm the local drinking in the area. If run properly and the staff trained properly, I actually don't think it's going to change anything at all. I think it's going to improve it. So my view is that I see nothing wrong with what the applicant has put forward. If the mitigating suggestions of sales via Deliveroo and selling a whole beer, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just surprised that it's necessary. I don't think the shop will cause any trouble at all. And that's what I would like to say to your committee, Madam.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Goldblatt. Mr.
Yes, I certainly would like to say I don't have any issue, and I wouldn't want to go against the police advice, but I will reiterate that during the initial conversations, the impression I was given, incorrectly or not, were that whatever suggestions I might have made would be rebutted, and that in the drinking in city centre there would be a very strong unwillingness certainly do not wish to undermine anything the police are doing in this area. So I did try to discuss, and I felt that maybe inappropriate, and I do apologise, but I have no issue to undermine the police in their undertakings at all. So it's not a willful act. I do apologise if you think that.
Of course we don't, Mr. Gregory. Of course we don't think that, and we totally respect your thoughts and what you've just said. We certainly don't think that, and I'm certain that Sergeant Gosling doesn't either. Mrs. Rogers, you have your hand up. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Goldbart just referred to in his last submission, he brought in the wine into the equation. Could you just clarify, because that's not been mentioned?
Wine. When was wine mentioned?
When Mr. Goldbart was speaking previously.
He mentioned wine. Okay, thank you very much for picking that up. Mr. Goldblatt, would you like to comment on the wine aspect, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, that was an error. I don't drink alcohol myself. So to me, spirits, wine, beer, they're all the same. They're not something that are of interest to me personally. So I do apologise.
Okay, so
we're still talking about the same products that have been mentioned by Mr. Gregor.
Okay, well, thank you. It's generic term, but that is the issue of some of the confusion, because we don't use generic terms. Regrettably, we have an understanding about what is what and what's applicable. So when you said wine, we did need some clarification. Thank you for raising that, Mrs. Rogers. That's helpful. Okay, so we've heard summations from Mr. Goldblatt and Mr. Gregory, and now Mrs. Rogers, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so unless I'm just going to check that members don't have anything further to ask, because this is a quite unusual application with regard to some of the lack of information that we do have, and not being able to tease out perhaps what we needed at today's meeting. But if there's anything further that members would like to take this opportunity to do that to assist us in drawing a decision, I'd be grateful. But if not, that's fine. Councillor Kelsey?
I don't think there's anything else I can say at this moment in time, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. And Councillor Johnson?
Nothing further from me, Chair. Thank you.
I just wanted to be absolutely certain that members had that last opportunity. So, everyone, I'll now conclude the hearing, and we will go, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I'll ask our legal advisor if she'd kindly explain that right of appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there will be a right of appeal to any decision that is made today. That appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court. The details will all be set in the decision letter that you will receive, and any appeal needs to be made within 21 days of receipt of that letter.
Thank you very much indeed. So, gentlemen, Mr. Goldblatt, Mr. Gregory, and all other officers and Sergeant Gosling, thank you very much for your attendance, and we will get that notification out to you as stated within the due date. And thank you very much for coming this morning. Good morning to you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.